Climbing the New York Times bestseller list faster than a John Grisham novel, comedian Tim Allen's first book, Don't Stand Too Close to a Naked Man, is number 11 on the list this Sunday and will be number 7 next week. Allen's sitcom, Home Improvement, fueled by the comedian's take on the war between men and women, is the number 1 show on television. That's right, the number 1 show watched by more men and more women than any other program. And we're very pleased to have him here. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
It is great to have you here. Tell me, I mean, there's so much to talk about. Let me just begin about the book, since this is the latest thing. You said this is the toughest thing you ever had to do?
Partially tough.
In terms of a creative output.
Right. The timing couldn't have been worse. We set this up 3 years ago, and it's taken me that long to get my notes together. Yeah. And it's like one of these term papers you keep putting it off. Yeah. Finally, they wanted it by Father's Day this year, and I just couldn't deliver it. At the same time, I'm finishing this up and editing the last run. I'm also involved in a movie and doing Home Improvement.
This movie is Santa Claus?
Right. So it was, and also it isn't like, I've had tough time in 15 years writing my comedy. I mean, it's just tough to write for me. I'd rather do it on stage and go, that was good, make my notes, but actually have to write it. This was just very difficult because it was fun because I used a computer, and once I got the first draft, I was just moving paragraphs around on a computer. That was kind of fun.
Cathartic?
Yes, quite a bit. Even though I have no idea what that word means, it was that. It was all.
It was fun to get down there and get it out.
Someone said that earlier today, and I said, "Wow, that was great." And I said, "What if I didn't know what that word meant?" But it seemed like I did.
I'm choosing brevity is what I'm going for.
It went. Some of the stuff, especially learning about my sexual awakening and how I really felt about my wife and kid, and and when I started taking shots at giving advice, I kind of shy away from the word advice because it isn't really advice. It's just my opinion about how things should be.
Yeah.
And it isn't really advice. I'm not suggesting people act that way. It's just sometimes you take certain bends in life, like I did a stint in prison, and I went back and thought about the reasons why I did that, and I'm able to say this because of this. I didn't make decisions, so maybe it's smart for people to make decisions early. And
Wait, because of what? You didn't?
Well,
you didn't make decisions because you were in prison and therefore...
No, I made the wrong decisions to get into prison.
To get into prison, sure.
And those decisions were partially because I didn't make any.
Yeah.
I said, so maybe it's a good idea for people to make decisions, no matter right or wrong, at least take control of your life by that simple thing and start making decisions.
I just saw a movie with Tim Robbins about prison life. How did it change you? I mean, when you go in there, you went in for 28 months,
right?
And you came out and then got back and got everything straightened out. What'd you learn there?
Well, on the negative side, it's a pretty unequal system, the justice system. It's not as, especially from that point of view. It does the best it can. It's blind, and if you see in the O.J. case, it can really be manipulated. It can be manipulated, regardless of how they want to stand it up. It's not. Sometimes it's very unfair.
The system that puts you in there.
Right. It's
who goes, who doesn't.
It's
who
very
gets
political. The politics should be taken out of that. Like who's getting a raise, who's going to be the DA, and all this kind of stuff does have an effect. And at least in mine, it did. The humanity of man does not get taken away. That was some of the best parts about. I learned that some of these men, as evil as they were at their core, I mean, they had made a wrong decision. Everybody took a wrong turn, but generally, under the same circumstances, every guy has got the same needs and desires and wishes and hopes and dreams. And some of that was really heartwarming when you see even the baddest of all the men had good parts about them. That was interesting. I learned to write better. I wrote a lot of letters, and I learned who some of my real close friends were.
Because they stood by you.
Yeah, and they didn't,
including your wife.
Including my wife.
Yeah. Did you come to some sense of? I mean, how do you deal with the time and being enclosed?
The first lesson I learned as an older con told me, he says, you do your time, you don't think about your time. Fill it up, do something. So I right away got a prison job, and then you just go to work in the morning. Had a regiment like anybody would. Look forward to Friday nights off. I mean, it's not like the dance or anything, but I mean, you got watch TV on Friday nights, and everybody had the little meals, and they all got there and watched the TV. And there's stuff to look forward to.
Is everybody in prison innocent?
Mm-hmm.
Do they all say that?
Oh yeah.
I shouldn't. I got a bad deal. I shouldn't be here.
Oh God! If I heard it one more time too. And the one guy's story is particularly funny that I always mention it to him.
Right.
I said,
this is the bank robber.
Yeah, the bank robber. I said, but Tommy, you were in a bank with a mask on and a shotgun. He goes, yeah. I don't know what I would do with that shotgun. That was probably a mistake. I'm going, but you figure as long as you were there, you take the money. He said, well, that all got really confusing there. I don't know what I was doing there, but I was not intending to rob that bank when
I did not have motive. I did not have intent.
I said, but you had a ski mask on and a shotgun, though. That would seem to be, and then if you kept pushing him, then he'd get really mad at you and he'd come after you. So you had to,
So what did you say when they asked you?
I said, well, no, I always said I was innocent. It wasn't mine. It was in my car. I was holding it, but it was actually, the police was theirs. They had given it to me to make me look bad because the church and the state have something against me. I've had letters. I don't want to get the guy's name. I had a letter from a guy while I'm on the show because he said I could understand. He wanted me to help him get parole, and he had killed 3 people or something. I mean, he's a very violent man. And it was the federal government, the CIA, and the Catholic Church had conspired, and he has proof. But I'd have to come visit him. And his proof that those 3 highly unlikely alliances would.
Jim Woosley, the Pope, and who else? And the President.
And the President, yeah.
Humor must have made a difference, though, for you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I did a couple of comedy shows for the inmates.
Yeah.
And that endeared me to them because they didn't get me shows.
Yeah.
And there's a couple guys on the paint crew. I worked on the paint crew for a while. That if I didn't keep them laughing, they would have beat me up. I know. The one guy just didn't like me.
Yeah.
I knew that from day one, and that's the trouble. And there, on the outside, you can either avoid that trouble or confront it in a little more civilized fashion. There, the only way you confront trouble is violence. And this guy wanted some violence with me. Just one of those things. He just didn't like me, big guy. But if I kept doing pretty close to closing time, Mr. Wabbit. Every time I did that voice, it would disarm this big character. So when he got bored painting, he's going. I could just tell he's starting to.
He's ready
to come after me. I'd do that. Save me. To this, I think if I see him, well, I don't think he's getting out for a while. But if you ever see him again, I just go pretty close to closing time, Mr. Wabbit. And he thinks
he just break up.
He break up. What he's saying to go back to painting.
Have you been back
to the penitentiary?
Yep. To perform, to see anybody, to any particular reason?
I just hadn't thought about it.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact.
Who made the difference after you got out? Was it Katzenberg that set you on the road to where you are now? Your talent and somebody noticing it.
Yeah, 8 years on the road, and I designed this. This is after deciding to make decisions. Yeah. I started setting goals for myself. I said I want to do this at this day. I want to start headlining the clubs at this point, and it didn't happen per schedule, but it did happen. And then at one point, Katzenberg called my agent and said he'd like to see me out in Los Angeles, and he and some of his friends at Disney had seen a tape, and they wanted to know who this comic was, and they immediately wanted to sign me to a deal to do something.
Right.
And the original deal was just they were so non-committal. I said, no, I need something. He says, well, they're offering you a development deal, which everybody in the business wants. At that point, I was doing pretty well on the road. I didn't need the money, so I said, I don't really want to do it. And it was a very funny pause. And my lawyer said, there's just one way to get him to move is say no to him. He was so stunned, he went, maybe I didn't hear you. And he called me at home.
And you said no.
He called me at home.
Yeah.
My wife said, it's like Klatzenberger. She couldn't get the name right. And I said, honey, it's Jeffrey Katzenberg. And he said, he said, I want to hear it from your lips. We're offering you a development deal, and you're saying no. I said, no. So he said, we'll talk after the...
Oh, you said, I am saying no.
I am saying no.
Yeah.
We went back, and he wanted to know why, and I told him why. Yeah. And then he said, well, what would you do if you could? And I said, well, I'd like to do a show about a home improvement show, about a guy that, mine was a little, my original prospect was a little rougher. It was more like the Thin Man series. That was a relationship. But we have that, I think, with Myrna Loy and William Powell, with an infant that's just a baby. So it would be this Pat, Jill, and Tim just as the baby, a neighbor you can't see, but actually I'd add a whole family. You see kids, beach toys, everything. The whole family, never see any part of them. Yeah. And then I actually have a show like Bob Vila's Home Again or This Old House. Mm-hmm. And the concept pretty true to my original sketch.
The idea is what? Why do you think it works so well? What is it that it connects? Because you say you're a masculinist. Right. You say what? Tell me what is it?
Well, I always thought, erroneously, that feminism was a study of what men do wrong.
Yeah.
And it really is not about that at all. I mean, the original idea is it's a celebration or examination of what's feminine and about women. There is no male side of that. The best I could come up with when I was researching this, it was philanthropist.
Researching the book.
Yeah, philanthropist is a lover of man.
Yeah.
But that's not the look. And then it's right. Then philanthropist is right after philanthropist. Too many words. A masculinist to me is just a study and a celebration or an interest in what's male and what is male, and it's very difficult to isolate it, except these little stupid things we do.
Like tools,
and what we do tells us more about men than men are difficult to pin down. Women seem to have more emotional base to study. Men don't seem to have that.
Yeah.
We do our works. We're studied by kind of what our works are.
You said, did you read Deborah Tannen and people like that who write about the differences in men and women?
Mm-hmm.
Did it say anything to you?
Well, she contacts me all the time. You know, she says, "Tim, how do men really think?"
Yeah, that's right. You're an expert man.
We use that on the show a lot, and I said this is how we get in. When we have arguments between Wilson will come up. We use a lot of reference material of that sort, and I said I think that the show works on many different levels because of that. Wilson is just like I imagine. The guys like to get advice.
Yeah.
And there's always a father, or especially grandfathers in our lives, that are able to tell you things that your dad can't. Your dad will tell you to get out of the street. Your grandpa always tell you about a story. He says, you know, cars have a velocity, and if they were to hit something the size of a brick, it would smash a brick. And you're going, and then you're allowed to think, going, God, I'm heavier than a brick. So that would be.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Wilson is, because I heard a real neat CEO of a big corporation I did a dinner for said that the one time he and his son connect is during the Wilson scene. You know, he's a 14-year-old too. It's hard. That's a hard age. And he said, "Dad, what do you think that means?" I said, "Well, I think he means that you can't lie without hurting somebody, whether it's yourself or the person." And then I think on the other end, in Tool Time, I say the other end because it's actually the other end of our studio, we're making something. And I also read once a professor had sent us a paper that he showed to students that the imagery about building is very deep in this country because so many of us get away from that in our lives. This show is about building things. These two guys are always fiddling with their hands. And it's very satisfying to watch, even more satisfying to do. But he said it's powerful imagery, that home building.
But there's also the notion of men like to build things and they also like to blow things up.
Yes, definitely. That something women would understand about men if she read that. There's a part of our development. Boys go through fire, explosives, and sharp objects.
Yeah.
Knives were a big. Remember when knives were? Every boy wants a knife, and it's a kid in my neighborhood. His dad goes, every time he pulls out his keychain, he's got a little Swiss Army knife. The kid goes, "Let me just for a little bit." And I remember my dad would let us play with his knives when he's around.
Yeah.
The kids are fascinated by knives. Then fire.
Right.
Then explosives. Then guns. Girls don't go through this development. I mean, not. I say these stereotypes because I don't know. I've done studies, but girls aren't generally interested. Girls will take a stick and make a wand out of it.
Yeah.
Guy make a stick, he'll start swatting people with it, or hit himself in the head. We're violent. I think we're generally more.
But are we that way because women raise us?
This is another good thing. I don't think women can take full pardon of our sins.
If women don't like us, they don't get a waiver because they're responsible.
Right. I think that women do most of the raising, and they raise most of the men. So I think there's some responsibility of their you can't have your cake and eat it too. You got to take some responsibility for this.
Why is it you think that whenever you see a football player on the sideline, it is always "Hi, Mom"? It is never "Hi, Dad."
Isn't that odd?
Yeah.
Well, it is.
And every athlete,
I do that too.
I would too.
Yeah. I congratulated my mom on some award shows, and she says, "What about your stepfather, who's been a father to me ever since my dad died, as much, if not more so, than my real father?" And I said, "It's odd. The dads tend to get into the background somehow."
But increasing number of women. You have more women watch you than watch Roseanne.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's appealing to women as well.
Well,
is it the male thing that appeals to them?
I think this
in
guy's,
a sense of why.
I think the guy's likable. I think Tim Taylor's likable because he genuinely loves his wife.
Yeah.
He doesn't cheat on any level. He has hobbies, which I think is real important for men to have. His good hobbies. He's building his hot rod. He likes his tools. He likes building stuff around the house. Those kind of guys are nice men.
Right.
Because they take all their aggressions out in something. They do something. And Pat Richardson one day said there's nothing sweeter to her than looking out in the garage and seeing her real husband, Ray, doing something with his hands. She says it's very sexy to see a man that interested in something that's not, women or gambling or something that can be destructive. And I think this Tim Taylor character makes the same mistakes. And I think most husbands make the same mistakes.
But the character is you.
Part of him is, yes.
Yeah. Where does it divide?
My real wife and Pat and I had this discussion. Pat says Tim Allen is quite a bit more cognizant than Tim Taylor. I mean, brighter too.
Cognizant of.
He wouldn't make these same mistakes, or he would cover them up better. Tim Taylor seems a little dull, although we've debated whether, even we don't know, is the character is developing, whether he knows that he's doing this. Because he might know that when he takes a Wilson slogan and turns it all around and makes nonsense, he knows that he's doing that. And these are big questions, and I've decided that he's smarter than he looks, and he might know that he's doing all this stuff. But Tim Allen would definitely know what he's doing. Pat and I suggested we wish we had a marriage like this. You know, this marriage gets resolved, not in typical sitcom fashion where in 23 minutes it's over, because he does make the same mistakes. And this, I think, is comforting to both men and women, because most husbands do make the same mistakes. So women like this Tim Taylor, and obviously they like Pat Richardson, because she's a really bawdy woman to be around, and she comes across that way.
Set this up for me. This is a clip from Home Improvement, the #1 show in America. It's Tim's birthday. Remember this?
Mm-hmm. This was, I don't know, I'd have to see the clip, but I think it's about how sad, I was worried about my age all of a sudden and getting sick. There's a lot of hypochondriac in me. Yeah. You know, if I can't figure it out, it's cancer. I'm sure.
It's over.
My doctor is so patient with me. You know, because I'm going, well, it's
so when you get a pain, you immediately call him.
I mean, if it's an odd pain, I go, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, that's a lump.
I haven't seen that before.
Oh boy, it's fibrous too. And I remember these warning signs of cancer, and all of a sudden they all seem to fit. Yeah. A lump or thickening in the breast or elsewhere. That's it. A change in bowel habits. Yeah. You know, then one of them doesn't fit. Unusual discharge. I go, I've never figured out what that is. I go, I don't want that. And
roll tape. Here it is. A scene from Home Improvement. Tim's birthday.
I got the whole birthday mapped out. 6 o'clock, you guys shower me with gifts. Yeah. Then you fix me the thickest, juiciest steak you can find. Baked potato, lots of butter, sour cream. Season it with little salt. 13 cups. Then, when the little velociraptors go to bed, you and I retreat to our private love nest.
Oh, no, not the garage again.
I made it better this year. I shellacked the workbench.
You shellacked the workbench last year, and it didn't dry in time.
That's why you weren't moving.
As a success, I know. How many times do you watch it? I mean, do you see it at home at night when it airs?
I watch, well, obviously do it.
Yeah.
And so the process is very different. I mean, the show, you know, takes all day Friday to do. You do one show in front of no audience, one show in front of an audience. And then it's much longer, because then they have to add room for a laugh spread. And sometimes it's from 3 minutes to 7 minutes. So that 7 minutes comes out of there somewhere, because you leave the laughs in, you take the show out. And then when it's edited, it's such a different show. So I got a tape of it.
A better show.
Sometimes I really miss the scene, and there's just no way they can put it in, because if you take out something, then you have to take out something else to explain the missing.
You got to let it breathe and all that stuff.
And so I get a tape on Mondays or Tuesdays the day before. Now we're on Tuesday, so I get a tape Monday morning, and then I go through a little superstition. I watched it the night before, and then there's nothing like watching it fresh, I call it, on TV. There's something about the breaks and everything. On tape, I just go through and make sure it's going to be a winner or not, and then I sit down with my kid, and we sit there, and I really like watching. I have no trouble watching myself. I like the whole package together.
Does success at your level have any downside?
Oh, it doesn't. I mean, have the simplest put, I want to take my daughter to one of those water parks. They look like fun, where you slide down the slides and you go, and there's no way I can do it. I can't foresee a way I can do that without attracting too much attention, not only to myself, but away from other people.
Away from her. Oh, yeah. Well, from other people.
Other people, their families.
You ruin their day.
I'd ruin their day. It would look fun to them, but they came there to have fun at the park, and then they'd all be trying to scramble to take a picture or get an autograph. So rather than cause that commotion, and you can't rent one at night, you can't rent the whole park, so just little things like that. Just the little invasions of privacy. And that's the only
small downside, except where it may invade your daughter's life.
All that is frightening, and I can't stop it now. I said the upside is far better. I met Carroll Shelby, the inventor of Cobra,
right.
And I mean, I'm meeting
car
people.
Designer, yeah.
I'm meeting people that are just. I mean, I'm getting offers like I made a car, a Mustang, a customized Mustang this year. I love cars, and Ford has been, kind of, would you like to do something else? And I'm going, and then Chevy finds out, and Chevy goes, hey, wait a minute, why don't you help us design a special this? And I love that stuff.
Are you working on some ultimate car, racing car you want to?
Well, I finished one. I put a race car on the street. I wonder what it would be like to have a 600 plus horsepower engine, gorilla brakes they call them, right off of a Trans Am car, built-in roll bar, really, really safe car, very fast, but with all leather interior and air conditioning. Just what would happen, and it pretty much we found out what happened. It's not unusable.
Why?
Well, it's too. It gets 6 miles per gallon.
Yeah, right.
It's very temperamental because it's got a race motor in it.
Once I woke up sexually, I looked at everything differently. I even looked at comic books anew. Suddenly, I half understood what Archie wanted from Veronica. I'm still trying to find out what Jughead wanted from Reggie.
They hung out together, so and as a kid, you wondered why these two. Well, Reggie's almost like Gilligan.
Women call men liars. It's semantics, really. We call it bullshitting.
Right.
Tim Allen is here. It's great to meet you. There are a lot of things I want to talk about. One is that, before I go, your fascination with Camille Paglia, the writer.
I read.
Some call the anti-feminist.
Well, I don't know. I just found her. I like her anger and intensity, and then love of rock and roll.
Yeah.
It's very difficult not to like this person, and plus her wealth of. I mean, sexual persona and.
This is a PhD and a lot of education.
Good Lord! You read that book and you go, how did you? Where do you have the time or the inclination to know that the 16th century art, the famous this guy, and it was the famous this guy, and this art is here, and this represents and Greeks, and she makes such great points that one of which it's hard to explain what that means, but the clergy used to celebrate young boys, and it's the same clergy that's now put in jail for that same.
Yes.
And I don't know what that means, and I forgot the whole run of that. She said. She made me laugh about men, urinating on fires as their way to conquer nature. And she says women can't do that without severely burning their loins. And she, in the middle of this thing about, it's not male bashing. She just says males traditionally have been these roles and women these roles. But it comes out that women have been a little smarter. They're a little bit more important. But she goes, on the other hand, she's typing her on her IBM laptop, only men would think of making this. You know, she's very much like me. She'll go at both species, and it seems like the women are winning as they usually do. But then she goes, on the other hand, men have this capacity. She says the George Washington Bridge. Only a man would think of sinking a piling into the riverbed to conquer the river. Yeah. Women would be just satisfied with waving across. You know,
yeah.
And sometimes it's true. She says that all art and culture are inventions of men. They did that. And I don't remember. I may be misquoting her, but she says she's suggesting that maybe women would not have done that. That's not their realm. They don't. That's not in their interest level. They would have done something else. And some of it, I just find her fascinating. She's really taught me a lot.
Never met her though. Tim Allen's book, Don't Stand Too Close to a Naked Man. It's great to have you here. Let's do it again. Thank you very much. We'll be right back. Stay with us.